you're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And your ears are not deceiving you. It has been less than a month and we are back with you. So we're hoping to get back on a semi-normal twice-a-month schedule after basically the whole summer of doing once a month. And we have a lot to talk about this time around, the first of which is our experiences, at least 66% of us, our experiences at New York Comic Con.
Rub it in. Just rub it in.
Steve, it's not like you're saying, like, let's go see a movie. I know it's a bit much sometimes to even plan, even for us who are in the area. So,
yeah, no, I'm actually looking forward to hearing all about it because I've heard bits and pieces, and yeah, I was looking forward to recording so we could listen all about it.
Well, now you're going to hear all about it. And the New York Comic Con experience started with the Flame On live show, and there's no point in me talking to you about it when we have Brian. So, Brian, why don't you tell us about the start with the NYCC Presents event that you shepherded?
So this year was quite a late start for us. We had a little thing called a hurricane hit us down here in Florida. So I was really not ready for that live show, but Pat and I, and mostly Pat, brought that thing to New York and had a fun evening at Rock Bar, which, Bill, you can attest to. Kept the same format as last year, sort of did a NPR-style trivia show with a little bit of interview thrown in for good measure. I say NPR-style because we are inspired by shows like Ask Me Another or Wait, Don't Tell Me. However, I do not claim anywhere near the quality of an NPR quiz show. But it was still a lot of fun. There was about, 15 to 20 people throughout the couple hours that we were there. And it was a lead into American Horror Story, which in previous years has been a huge lead in and brought us lots of people midway through the show. This year, I don't know. I think they actually lost people after we left. I mean, well, they did lose people after we left, but I don't think they had quite the draw for American Horror Story this season that it has had previously. But anyway, we had friend of the show, Chris Cummins, there. We'll talk about that, his events. And Square Bears, Brian from Square Bears. Jay and, oh God, what's the other one? An X-Men podcast. Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men were our special guests in the second half of the show. Pat interviewed. And who am I leaving out? That's it, right?
In terms of your interview guests, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of interview guests, we had a couple people throughout the evening kind of jump up. Ron, of course, from a frequent fan of Flame On and Comic Book Bears. Ron was there and played an active part of the show. Tried to get us a little drunk, which he does.
And danced
sometimes.
a bit.
And yes, and I have that on video. And I am so pleased that we have that little memento from the evening. But, yeah, we really thank Rock Bar for hosting us for now. This is combined with the Comic Book Bears events that we started, 4 years ago? This is, I think, the fourth iteration of this thing we've done.
2014, 15, 16, yeah, it's the fourth year.
So, I mean, we really enjoy being at Rock Bar. I think we've managed to work out most of the kinks, although I'm sure every year there's going to be new things that pop up. And I'm hoping we can do it again next year. I mean, again, this was kind of hastily thrown together. And, God, if we tried even more, we could probably do a better job. But I will say that this year, unlike last year, last year we got video of it. This year we just did audio, and the audio came out passable. So if you go to flameonshow.com and you subscribe to Flame On, the most recent episode will include the audio from the whole show. For better or for worse. Again, there's some sections where it's a little harder to make out certain people, but we kept all the fun and trivia stuff. The only thing we cut, I think Pat cut, there was a segment where we did, where did we steal this from? We stole this from some game show. You put pictures up of the two different people, and you say some attribute or something, and they have to pick which person it is. And it was really kind of one of those things where if you hadn't listened to Flame On or you didn't know people, you really were just kind of guessing based on what they look like. But for at least a couple of people, I think it was kind of fun because they know the people involved. So I think we cut that out because that doesn't really work very well on the audio. But Bill, you and Chris had a great segment with me. That was fun. We did some Blade Runner trivia, which I was really excited about. And, yeah, I don't know. I always have a good time. Mm-hmm. And it's always nice when it's early in the week because it's out of the way and you can relax and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, getting that out of the way on Tuesday and then having the rest of the week for more fun stuff is such a pleasure. And just being in that area, Christopher Street, and at Rock Bar and all the places around there is just such a treat. Celebrity sighting, I did walk past Matthew Broderick. That was exciting for me. Over on Bleecker Street, went to Bleecker Street Pizza and had a slice. And on our way back, we walked right past him, and I was like, oh my God! Of course, like I do, celebrity sightings. Those of us down here in Florida don't get them very often unless you work at Disney. But the first question many people were asking me was like, was Sarah Jessica Parker with him? And I'm like, no. So,
honey, no.
I know. I think that ship sailed a while ago.
She doesn't walk around the city.
She gallops? What are you saying? That's mean. I don't even think that's true. Anyway. But yeah, I really appreciate it.
It's true that she gallops.
No, of course not.
Was Nathan Lane with him?
No, that would have been even better. No, Bill, I really appreciate it. You're the reason that we're there in the first place. If it weren't for you organizing our little live show back 4 years ago, like, we wouldn't be doing this. And every year it's just such a treat to see you and Chris and just hang out and have a good time. So thank you, as always, for being a part of it and being the reason that we're there.
It was my pleasure, and I have to say I was terrified going up against Chris on trivia. Yeah, I know I could kick his ass with comic books. I know I could kick his ass with some movie properties, but he has the bigger geek knowledge spread.
Yeah.
And I won.
Yeah, no, seriously. You absolutely redeemed yourself.
Especially with questions about shows like Rick and Morty, which I've never watched, or Steven Universe.
Yeah, that was an awkward category. It was aliens, and it was either Rick and Morty, Doctor Who, or Star Wars. And I really went through and tried. Neither you nor Chris had watched Rick and Morty, so,
So I'm guessing that there weren't any questions about pugs, because we all know that Chris Cummins loves the pugs.
No, but I would love to get him and Mike Norton in the same space.
Oh, yeah.
Pug off, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could tell that Chris was just in heaven seeing that huge inflatable pug that was over the Bandai booth or something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hoping next year that I'll have enough bandwidth to actually do something. My intention was just to be a participant and let other people take the lead like you and like Chris did. And you said, yep, this was in the beginning of the week, but my week started the night before when I went to see Paul Weller in concert. And as a lot of people know, as I've mentioned this on the show, I've been recovering from a fairly substantial foot injury, and the issues have been coming in fits and spurts since it healed. It really hasn't healed yet. So I had intended to be one of the judges with Bryan at the Doctor Who contest the following night, but I eventually bailed, and I felt terrible about it. But that's a baton hand off to you there, Bryan. Why don't you tell us about the Doctor Who event that took place on Wednesday night?
I've been a part of that as well now for the last couple of years, and I love Doctor Who. As anyone who's listened to the show before knows, I'm pretty much a huge Whovian. And Chris is also a big Who fan. And so, it's Chris's event. Like, Chris started this, again, 4 years ago. He brought this event to the Way Station in Brooklyn, which is a Doctor Who steampunk-ish themed bar. The reason why people think it's more of a Doctor Who bar is because there is a bathroom in the bar that is painted exterior and a little bit interior to look like a TARDIS. And so everybody, of course, has to get pictures with that and in that. But this year, fourth year he's done this, there was some really cool things that happened that has never happened before. Normally, costume contest, trivia, prizes, some fun interviews, that's all there. And that all happened this year. Chris does a phenomenal job of getting prizes from different publishers. In fact, he gets so many prizes that he's giving them away like candy. It's crazy. It's pretty much you're guaranteed if you get something right in that trivia, you're going to get something, and it's usually pretty good. This year, because I helped out with some of the questions, we ended up finding out that in the audience there was somebody who had made a TARDIS puppet. And as soon as we heard that, Pat and I kind of looked at each other, and Pat, talked to me on a break and said, "Hey, I think that's the Doctor Puppet lady." And I had to think about it. I'm like, that's right. The Doctor Puppet, if you haven't seen it, is this YouTube series videos, and they're stop motion animated Doctor Who segments with puppets. And it's not official. It's all fan made. But the puppets are amazing. They look great. And the little animations are really cute and just fun. And sure enough, I'm going to mispronounce her name, but I think it was like Alicia from the Doctor puppet was absolutely there. And she had several of the Doctor puppets with her. So we actually got to do a really cool, just off the cuff, just because she's there, interview with her about the Doctor puppet, which was awesome. And then, of course, people want to take pictures with her and all that stuff. And then it just so happens, because she was a Doctor Who fan, she was dressed as the new Doctor, played by Jodie. Is that Whittaker? Jodie Whittaker, I think. Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
And then won not only the Doctor costume contest, because there's different ones. There's Doctor, Companion, and there's like Alien or Villain. But she actually got then the overall best of show. Because, I mean, let's face it. She was the only one who dressed up like that. She looked great. She had a glowing key in her hand, a glowing TARDIS key. And, I mean, it was lit by a little LED or something. But still, like, really cool touch. And she's the creator of the Doctor puppet. Like, who are we not to give her these amazing prizes because of her love of the fandom and the community? So, long story short, we had a great time. It was a sold-out event. I guess every year it does really well. The people at the way station, Andy, could not have been any nicer to us. And yeah, I mean, that's just a shoe-in. If you want to have a good time on a Wednesday night the week of New York Comic Con, come out to Brooklyn at the way station, and it's just so much Doctor Who love. You'll leave positively glowing or I don't know, what's another thing a TARDIS does. You'll leave positively materializing. I don't know.
Either that or making a whoosh, whoosh,
exactly
sound.
You'll feel regenerated. That's what I'm saying. There it is. I got there eventually.
Nice. So that leads us to Thursday, which is the first day of the con, and unfortunately Brian's only day at the con because of scheduling conflicts, which seem to happen every year. So why don't you tell us about what your Thursday was, and then I'll chime in afterwards.
So every year, up until this year, Orlando Gay Pride is that weekend. So I always have to leave early because of Orlando Gay Pride. This year, Gay Pride got moved. It's now the coming weekend. Basically, we're recording this in between the weekends. But, unfortunately, I had to go to a different thing this time. I had to go to DC for a curling tournament. But it is kind of relevant because it's the first ever LGBT curling tournament in the United States, and it was called the Glitter Bomb Spiel. I had a lovely time at that. But Thursday, again, the only day we've ever been able to do New York Comic Con, it was very quick because, with one day, it's really hard to do everything, and I ended up skipping all the panels, including my friend Jude and Jamie's Times Out panel about Wonder Woman, which I really wanted to go to. I was so crushed that we had to make a Sophie's choice of if you will, between that and something else. But got to see a lot of my usual haunts at the show. T. Franklin was there. Harken Her Bingo Love, which is coming out soon, pretty much, I think, end of the year. And Jamie Faye and Rick Vervanowicz, I never say his name right, from Drumfish. I bought a lovely Singing Bear original art from Janet Leigh that I saw and thought, oh my God, Pat's gonna love this. Our friend Danny Haas here from Orlando, who does like that split face sort of style art at a lot of shows, he was there, and it was his birthday, so of course we had to go, see him. But all that was really cool. The only notable things on the show floor, at least I was excited about, was I stalked Adam Savage.
Okay.
So I've been watching Adam Savage's YouTube series called Tested, and he does all these like awesome one-day builds, and he does all these cool prop things, and just has very geeky adventures. If you remember Adam Savage from Mythbusters, he is the one who has less of a mustache and is the more sprightly kind of crazy one. So anyway, he has been going to New York Comic Con and San Diego Comic Con and other shows incognito in costumes you would not know he was there. So he can kind of walk around without drawing attention, or at least without drawing attention because he's a celebrity. So this year, of course I know this now because last year he went as oh my God, Totoro. I couldn't get the two T's out, and I missed him. So this year I knew he was going to be there. He was going to go out on the floor on Thursday. We basically waited in the middle of the show floor where all the cars were, the Chevys, and we just stood there because we had tweeted that he was going to start walking the floor. And all we thought is there was one clue. We thought it was his hat. So we thought, oh, he always wears this like straw brim kind of thing, his hat. He's going to be some character with a hat, and that's going to be his tell, and who knows. So we're standing there for like 10 minutes. I'm just kind of watching people and all this stuff, and nothing. I'm like, all right, you know what? Let's just go to Artist Alley because Artist Alley is more fun. Let's just forget it. It's not going to happen. Oh, well. So we're walking out. We're walking down one of the main thoroughfares, and we get behind this giant Chewbacca. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. He's like really like 7-foot tall Chewbacca. You don't see that every day. And there's a little stormtrooper next to him who wasn't that little, but by comparison. And then Pat kind of like looks at him and kind of goes, are you Adam Savage? And like he turns and he looks at us, and I had kind of moved on, but I mean, I saw his eyes, and like, you know, we were trying to just sort of get out of the way, and they were taking pictures and all that stuff. Well, we didn't think about it. We just kind of thought, oh, wouldn't that be funny? And that's probably not him. Then we get to Artist Alley, and my lower back's killing me. I'm having my own little whatever injury issue. And we sit down for a bit, and we're sitting there thinking, and we're talking, and we're like, I think that was Adam Savage. Like I just, that's the kind of thing I could see him just totally doing, and it makes sense. And then, you know, the whole response, and sure enough, we went on later and verified that indeed was Adam Savage. So totally stalkery and something I don't normally ever do. And we didn't even realize it at the time, but we actually got to see Adam Savage on the floor, which was really cool for me. I don't know. The show was fine. After coming out of San Diego, the two show floors look so similar in a lot of ways. It's a lot of the same stuff usually because, you know, only a couple months apart. Bill, you probably have way more interesting stuff that you found and got to experience than I did. So I'm going to shut up now.
I don't know if I can really say that. This was a strange con for me because I don't mean to harp on these health issues, but this was the first con in the 9 years that I've gone that I've actually skipped a day. I actually skipped Saturday. To give people some framework about why this year was a little bit different, for the last, I want to say 4 or 5 years, Artist Alley has been held in a section called, oh boy, you know, it's New York, so my accent's got to come out cold, in a section that was called Javits North, which was, there was a bridge that connected Javits North to the rest of the Javits Center, and it kind of catered to people, because there are a lot of people that Artist Alley, that's their con, you know. They might go through a panel once, not a panel, through the main floor once through, but there's a lot of people that go for Artist Alley, and that's their con. They moved it to a section where a good amount of panels take place, so that compromised the number of panels that actually took place this year. And I only made one trip through Artist Alley in full. I don't know what it was like when you were there, Brian, but my God, was it hot.
It was hot and packed and awful.
Oh my God, it was not comfortable. I did make a return trip to Artist Alley. Every year I get a sketch cover from Art and a sketch cover from Franco. This year I got Micronauts from sketch covers that I had from the Hasbro book. So I got Franco doing a very nice Baron Karza and Art Baltazar doing a very nice Microtron. So I like keeping that tradition up. And this was a year that, and I know both, not so much Brian. Oh no, Brian, you saw me in Baltimore when you're in pretty bad. And Steve has seen me where I acquire a lot on the con floor, you know, through back issues or whatever. I hardly bought anything this year. I bought a Newsboy Legion hardcover from the classic Kirby because it was half off. I bought a Tomorrow's Book and a couple of back issues, and that was it. I really didn't spend much. God knows, because you can spend whatever in your bank account plus there easily. You can get wrapped up in it. And this year, I didn't know, for whatever reason, that just wasn't the vibe I was in. I did go to a number of panels. I saw the DC Meet the Publishers panel. I did see these, and I'm so glad he brought these back. The Sunday Afternoon with Dan DiDio, which is this very laid back talking where he brings people, mostly DC people, but there have been times in the past where, you know, Tom Brevoort and Dan Slott just came walking in and he had them on panel. You know, just talking about what you like about comics. It's very loose and it's very celebratory. I wanted to bring this up, this word celebratory, because Brian, you missed the gay panels, the LGBT oriented panels, and I didn't have an opportunity to see any of them either. But I got overloaded this year between FlameCon and what was going on at BookCon. Well, how we all experienced something at Heroes. And my friend Aaron, who if you ever seen my friend Aaron Blankfield, he is one of the best Mario cosplayers around because he has, like his mustache literally is Mario's. And he brought up that he just doesn't go to the panels anymore because it seems that there's a trend of the LGBT oriented panels that there's a victimization vibe. He hasn't been to one in years that was celebratory, and there's so much to celebrate. And I was just wondering what your take was on that, Brian, because I really feel that way too right now.
It's tough because my gut instinct is to say I agree. I absolutely have felt over the past few years, I have this conversation again and again and again, that we are enabling victims by making things a little too safe and a little too protective or a little too whatever. And people are using the outrage as a means of propelling their message and to some extent themselves. And I don't think that's fair to all people. I know it's not, or at least I know part of that's not fair to all people, because I've had longer conversations with like T and T Franklin, who at one of my panels had kind of one of those moments. And I've had conversations with my friends, trans friends, people who represent communities that I'm not quite this. I mean, I'm part of the same bigger community, but like, I'm cisgender white male. I can't dip in exactly and have the same perspective. So, Oral on our show Flame On, like there is a legitimacy of this like outrage that's always been there, and only in the last few years is it really getting a voice that is challenging the world. And because of that, it's getting pushback from those who would seek to silence any of us. And a lot of us, and we've seen that recently in Charlottesville and other places. However, I say all that to say you can have a panel and not be about victims. The It Gets Geekier panel I did in San Diego, I was thrilled for it to not get into that space and really stay positive and stay more uplifting. And I had even talked with a panel organizer, Josh Yale, about, well, let's throw some meat out there and let's see if we can get into a discussion about the states of hysteria or some of these other things that are pushing buttons. And Josh is like, no, I don't want that. Let's stick to positive. Let's do uplifting. Let's do this. And, obviously if the panel had taken that turn, we would have gone with it. But there's certainly a way to, I think, run a panel and try to not go down that path. And then, unfortunately, you still have, last year's New York Comic Con, the Times Out panel that I went to about X-Men and diversity, and, had the Romani activists come in and start throwing bombs. Like, you're still going to have that happen, but I think a good panel organizer, host, moderator, and panelists, too, can sort of make sure that even if it dips into that corner, it doesn't stay there and it comes back out with the positive message, the uplifting and everything. So, but to say all that, I do agree, Bill, that we've seen a lot of the other this year.
Yeah. I mean, with the most distasteful situation that I had been, and I don't want to, believe me, it wasn't Heroes, because I think that was an important discussion that happened. That I helped propel a little bit.
You were brave. It was fine.
Right. And as I said, these are points we need to hear sometimes. At the Love is Love panel at FlameCon, one of the people in the audience, and I really, really took issue with this, complained about Love is Love, that the majority of the creators were white men. And it just seemed to me that the spirit that project was formulated around, that's not an argument to have. Especially when you look at things like Mark Andreyko for the foreign editions, soliciting supplemental materials specifically for certain regions. And the white males that were part of that project included Scott Snyder, who used to go to Pulse every Friday night with his friends from Disneyland, and includes Tony Bedard, who met his wife at Pulse. And I really wanted to tell that chick to shut up.
Well, so I know the other side of this, I think, because I talked to T. Franklin about this.
Who is the only woman of color in that book.
Correct.
Yeah.
And was at that panel you're talking about.
Yeah.
And took issue with Andreyko a little bit, but more so with Phil Jimenez. And according to her, and again, this is all like from her recounting, because I haven't kept up with FlameCon for various reasons, but with her perspective, she felt like, even if maybe that wasn't the right, whatever, she had a legitimate like grief that a project like that in an ideal world, and this isn't a reflection maybe on Mark, but should have a more diverse backing, not just because obviously personal experiences, that legitimate totally, but like Phil Jimenez came back and actually said something like, I forgot, I don't want to misquote her, but basically was surprised that she was the only person of color in the book, and said something like, well, there just aren't that many, or they didn't sell very well. I mean, Phil was trying to, I think, just sort of deal with the situation and trying to, like, cover for Mark to some extent. But Mark is the kind of guy who absolutely recognizes those kind of issues and is an ally. I mean, he's not just an ally, he's part of the community. So I guess this is what comes back to. Yeah. We turn on our own communities and get very accusatory very quickly because we're so mad at external things outside the community that unfortunately I think sometimes our energy and our emotion gets just misdirected. Yeah. And I think everyone in all of these things would agree that at the end of the day, what Mark Andreyko and all the creators, whatever their backgrounds did, is amazing and should be celebrated. But at the same time, it does reflect a comic book community that's very white and very male. Mm-hmm. And we have to be frank about that. We have to be honest and say that's true. That's just the way it is. And that's not necessarily a good thing. And so,
but it's also not necessarily a bad thing, because some of those white men and a lot of those straight white men have put forth very sensitive, touching work on a lot of these issues that we're talking about.
It's not diminishing. So this is the thing I've been wrestling with. It doesn't diminish the creative talent and the product coming out of white men, heterosexual or homosexual, whatever. But it does reveal a system that tends to favor and select based on sort of a societal lean, and that's just an honest sort of assessment. And I'm not. It's less about attributing and demonizing. See, this is the problem: is people they start demonizing, and it's like that's not what we're doing. That's not what you should be doing.
And I think it's crossed over into that many times recently.
Absolutely, no question, and I completely agree with that. But again, the point that these people make by bringing the question up is a valid question and does deserve discussion, because only by discussing that there is a very.
But does that discussion necessarily come up when it is something charitable? I think I always go back to Bob Geldof with Live Aid when they were putting together the lineup for the concert, and he said, if it was up to my personal taste, 80% of these bands wouldn't be playing. But I'm sorry, if you sold 5 million, you're on.
Right.
There is a mercenary mentality that I think should go with certain charitable books.
Yes, and I made the case about a non-charitable thing. I made this case just about a commercial product, Ghost in the Shell, on Flame On. I made this whole argument about, it's not that they're trying to whitewash these Asian roles, it's that they feel like these Hollywood actors or actresses who aren't, in this case, Asian, would sell the movie better. Mm-hmm. And that isn't, they're not trying to be like, they're not trying to be racist about it, but it is an inherent sort of racist decision. Maybe not made out of malice, but absolutely made and sort of disregard to the heritage of the character. And so in the same way here, we have comic book readers of all race, color, creed, etc. And there's a lot of them that have basically kind of put up with and sort of, found joy in these stories coming out of white men forever. However, I've seen this look of passionate joy out of women, out of people of color, out of gay men. I mean, seeing Cena out there writing amazing Iceman comics warms my heart to no end. But let's try to give that back as well. And only by acknowledging that the system and the community is fairly tilted towards one direction or the other will allow us to make those corrections. That's all I'm saying. Like, I want to have the discussion. I think panels are an interesting place to do it. The problem, and this is what I think you're seeing, and I agree, is the demonization. It's the finger pointing. It's the blowing up on bleeding cool about this stuff that's not helpful and is actually maybe causing people to pull back and just not want to even deal with it. So I guess we have to figure out a way to balance all that,
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you on several of these points. And what's really interesting though, and I think this is kind of the other side of that as well, is that you have, this kind of leads right back into the whole diversity argument conversation that happens. And in fact, recently, I think it was at the New York Comic Con when they had the Diamond Distributors retailers meeting, and it just evolved into a shouting match about how diversity does not sell, and you've replaced all these characters so fast, and we want our old characters back, and all these new pandering characters are part of the problem. Some of that kind of goes along with the if you are looking for a more diverse range of characters to attract more diverse readership, you have to market to that readership that you want. You can't just create a character and think that the readers will come automatically. And I think this has been brought up before, where you aren't targeting the correct audiences. You're targeting the same old audiences that have been buying the same old comics for decades or years or whatever, and they have this set of expectations that for many of them they don't want to change. Now, that's not to say that some of these readers, some of these all long-time readers, some of these stereotypical white cisgendered male heterosexual readers aren't going to accept a new spin on a character or a new version of a character. They might love it. They might go ahead and buy the heck out of it. But they're not the core audience who you really want to attract. You want to diversify your readership. You need to make sure that you've got creators that are diverse, you've got characters that are diverse, but you're also marketing to those same people that you want to read your comics. You've got to expand the audience. You can't just keep, going after the same demographic group. And I think a lot of the conversations, or to be honest, defensive arguments that you hear in a lot of these panels kind of all sort of float around that same topic. You've got, love is love. Yes, most of the creators are cisgendered white men that are trying to create something that's marketed to, a segment of the readership that's very, 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 and still to this day, very underrepresented, which is the queer readership, core. And what they're doing is wonderful, and the stories are amazing. But even still, just like some of those panelists will say, well, okay, you're marketing to this group, you're marketing to the queer group. Great, you've got our attention. But you know what? We want to see some of those other voices that were kind of promised. Now that we're here, we want to see somebody who represents us making these stories too. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of I don't want to say it's self-defeating, because obviously everybody wants to have some kind of representation. Everybody wants to see a creator who speaks to them, but also speaks from experience because they are like them. It's very kind of problematic. And when you look at the panels that I've been to, and I listen to the panels that you guys have attended that I haven't attended, that have the same problems over and over again. The people are coming up and saying, okay, well, yes, this is a great change. Yes, this is this is a path forward, but it's not enough, or it's not the right kind of path forward. It sounds self-defeating, and yes, we get very defensive, and yes, everybody who feels attacked gets defensive about it. Mm-hmm. But it is coming from people who now have a chance to actually make their voices heard. Bryan, I've actually heard a lot of the conversations that you have with Oral, and I love them when they do come up.
I'm glad you do, because they are stressful as all hell. Let me tell you.
Oh God, yeah, the stress that you can feel.
I don't like playing Great White Devil. I hate it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's awful to be on the receiving end of the arguments, but it is nice to kind of be able to hear that, especially in this kind of medium, and on a regular comics discussion or a film discussion, like you brought up Ghost in the Shell. The sad thing about the whole Ghost in the Shell thing, just to bring it back to that, yes, they thought it would be a great idea. Hey, we've got actors and actresses that are well recognized. Yes, they're the wrong heritage for this character, but they're recognized, so that'll actually propel this to some kind of success. It backfired horribly and had zero success. It was a box office flop, and it still hasn't made its money back in the aftermarket. So, that kind of situation, and in fact, that seems to keep happening. So I don't know why film studios or TV executives still continue to push that idea.
Well,
it makes sense to me.
Let me bring in another argument here. And boy, we went on a tangent, but this is pretty valuable here, so why don't we keep going? When I think of characters that cater to a diverse crowd, and I hate that word cater, because I do think that there is something organic about the success of Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. I think there's something organic about some lasting power within Miles Morales. These are well-defined characters. I'm not saying that you can't retool a character to some degree and it be as successful as those examples. And you mentioned Cena, and I think he's doing it really, really well with Bobby with Iceman.
Mm-hmm.
What happened at the Marvel retailers meeting has been something that's been a thread that's been going on with Marvel for some time, and there have been, let's just put it, some inarticulate representations from Marvel executives about what they were trying to do.
Which doesn't help. It doesn't help at all.
I think it goes to the core, which I don't think is faulty. People are fine with Jane Foster as Thor, but they miss Odinson. There's nothing wrong with wanting the character you came up with. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And sometimes some of these tweaking of characters, whether it be on a racial or a sexual orientation, does not benefit from a calculation. The point I make is the African American version of Wally West. What you saw in New 52, there was no development with that character. There was nothing there. You bring back classic Wally, have an explanation why these two characters are both named Wally. They're named after the same uncle, and all of a sudden, this other Wally has bite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to. I think it goes every time to character definition, and well-defined characters. That's why we miss characters like Banner Hulk. That's why people miss them, because they are well-defined characters. That's an issue that Marvel recognizes now. I just think they have been really, really poor in providing a company line about trying to make everyone happy. It's ridiculously complicated by older retailers using antiquated language and antiquated ideologies. And I do know two retailers who were at that meeting, and they were not really pleased with how Marvel set up the meeting as a kind of like, hey, it's a fan panel. Oh, here's Charles Soule. The retailers don't need that.
Well, and actually you hit the nail right on the head, and that is retailers using antiquated language. And language is such a huge thing, and especially in the gay community and the queer community, language is huge. But it also is something that's a lot more modern. And when you have people using an older way of speaking about things, maybe because they don't know the current terminology, they're not sensitive to different ways of saying certain things, people who are listening to it can also take an additional meaning from those people's words. And I'm not just talking about comments comments to a CBR article or a Newsarama article where everybody's just like, on their soapbox or throwing out daggers. Just very simple ways of talking about new characters by emphasizing emphasizing the race, or emphasizing the gender, or emphasizing the sexual orientation, and talking about it as if like, oh, my character has been completely replaced or just, is changed. I think there's an automatic reaction from people in our shoes, maybe, younger readers or younger fans, or even younger creators that have not grown up with a different way of speaking of things. Not exactly a right way of speaking of things, but a different way of speaking of things. And so they don't necessarily understand that what that person is saying is not coming from a place of hate or anger necessarily, but maybe just not using the right terms and not really attaching a very, very negative connotation with it, but it is, by the listeners interpreting it that way, it then becomes a much more problematic argument, problematic conversation.
Here's what I've seen, and this is not just this conversation, but general in terms of our politics right now. As you get older, it is much easier to slip into your old shoes and stay in your own comfort zones, and it is much, much harder to change your language, change your terminology, change your perspective.
Yes.
On top of that, it is a lot harder, for some more than others, to empathize with those who are younger, those who are different, those who are not in your community. And because of those two things, and given that the comics market, by and large, and I don't mean everybody, of course, but is mostly 40 to late 30, mid 30, like we're all in this sort of age range of a generation or two, it is especially problematic in our comic book stores and our communities to deal with these issues, as opposed to things that are a little more young, like cartoons and things that are appealing to younger sets of audiences or older sets. Like, because we're in sort of an interesting bubble in the comics community and retailers especially, it makes these problems in society much more heightened and challenging. And so my big thing is to try to be careful about your terminology. We had this happen at our show. Somebody on our panel somebody used the wrong gender pronoun against somebody else on the panel, and that was an honest mistake, and they took it very personally. And I've been in the position where I've used the wrong gender pronoun for somebody, a friend of mine, and meant no ill will. It was just by accident, and it happens. And what we need to do on the people who are cisgendered is be more aware of the fact that the pronouns can matter. We just need to be more empathetic to our trans friends and our other friends that have these labels mean so much. Because if you put yourself in their heads a little bit, or in their shoes at least, you can understand why it means so much to get that gender right. Because they've struggled so hard to be accepted as that particular gender. And if you just think about it and give it a little bit of mental exercise, that empathy will flow more naturally. But you have to put the effort. And again, as we get older, and I'm putting myself in the same shoes, I'm 40 years old, I'm about to be 41 in December. It's hard. It's really hard. And we tend to be dismissive because we think, oh, those kids today, what do they think? Or what are they doing? This is crazy. But again, they are this is a normal generational divide that always happens, has happened time immemorial, and we should learn from when we were in that position. We did not want to be dismissed. We did not want to be swept aside and said, oh, comics are for kids. Nobody reads those. What are you kids doing? Like, we have to remember our history and go, wow, we don't want to be those assholes, and try to let them have their different characters, and we can still have ours. And this is what Marvel's trying to rectify. DC's always done a better job, I think, but Marvel's trying to figure this out. They are now, with Generations and Legacy, they are trying to say, look, we can have Jane Foster Thor, and you can have Odinson Thor, you can have Miles Morales, you can have Peter Parker, you can have Totally Awesome Hulk, and you can have Bruce Banner. All of these characters can be there in different amounts, and it's okay. And your favorite might be Bruce Banner, and he's gone for a while. He's off the table. That's nothing new. That's been there forever. We've done that so many times. Like, really, are we really that, like, surprised that they don't have Odin's son having the hammer right now? How long was Beta Ray Bill around? How long was whatever? Like, this has happened. It'll all come back around. We'll get that eventually. And it's just, they're all just stories. And even if your main fan, your sports team isn't on the field, that doesn't mean you can't go back and think about all the glory days. And especially in comics, like, you can go back and read old issues. You can read trades. You can go to the
still there.
cartoons.
They don't disappear into the air.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've never understood
why
that
are we so
complaint.
precious about this and demand that Marvel not try to bring in new audiences and not try to be more inclusive of other communities that we don't necessarily see? Like, so I think we can all win if we're patient, if we let the storytellers do their job, and if we still speak out when we need to and say, hey, Marvel, we really kind of want this, because they do listen. And I think everybody needs to just be more empathetic and patient, and life will be so much better. The internet has enough crazy shit going on with our current political everything, that if we can keep the comics book community to a dull roar in terms of the drama, like, that would be nice. That would be really nice.
And what we just had in the past 32 minutes was a really good LGBT comics panel.
It would be amazing. We need to do this.
We need to do this.
I also have to say, to be on the side of the curmudgeon-y old fans who don't want to see anybody who's different. Like, they want their straight Iceman. They want their, male Thor. They want their, white Captain America. These are also the same super nerds, because we're all nerds. We are.
I'm not a
and we
nerd.
feel very okay, fine. You're a geek. But anyway, we all feel extremely, extremely passionate about those particular characters. And, for the legacy characters, obviously we're very passionate about that. For newer characters or newer versions of characters or newer iterations of these characters that are actually creating a more diverse representation for the readership or for potential new readers, obviously there's got to be some passion there. I know Marvel hasn't done a very good job of developing that passion, unfortunately, in many aspects, but there are people who are very passionate about Sam Wilson as Captain America. They love the idea of Sam Wilson as Captain America. They love the story arc that has been put in place for the past 4 years, as he's gone from Falcon to Captain America, now back to Falcon again. There are people who are huge fans of that. We all kind of, why can't we all just get along? We're all super passionate because we're geeks. That's why we do this podcast. That's why we read these comics. That's why we love these characters and why we talk about them and argue about them all the time. And I think that a lot of times, especially if you spend a lot of time in message boards or in comments section, it almost feels like nobody gives a flying crap about everybody else's passion for those particular characters. It's all, well, this character I own, it's my passion. I don't believe that you could in any way understand how I feel about these classic characters or these new characters or these creators who understand how I think or these creators who understand how you think. I think if we all just kind of step back and realize that we all feel very, very strongly about these characters, about these fictional, wonderful characters that mean so much to us. Whether we're looking at the new characters, looking at legacy characters, looking at new versions or new developments for for characters that we've known for years, we might realize that we're all enjoying reading comics, or at least I hope so. And that's I think probably the most important thing to take from the fact that we are very passionate.
And that's the key: enjoying. Don't go into comics expecting to be offended.
Oh yeah,
I do think there is an element, and that's beyond the LGBT issue.
Yeah.
There is an element that is looking to be offended, that is looking to muckrake, and I think we have to weed those people out. I really do.
Yeah.
Because they're not a positive influence on the community or on the craft, and it takes a lot to create this stuff. It takes a lot. Bryan and I have both written comics. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot to do this. And that's one thing I just hate about there's certain comic fans, that they treat the characters as three-dimensional and the creators as something less than that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the other thing
that's problematic, But all right, we covered a lot here. Let's go back to New York Comic Con. Okay, but I'll just abbreviate it.
Comics.
I hate bringing up the foot issue. Also, I need to provide a caveat while we're recording. There's a really good football game going on. It's the Eagles versus the Panthers, and both teams are 4-1. And you may be hearing Rob yelling because one of our favorite former Packers is on the Panthers now, and he's having a good night. So if you hear some woohoos and stuff coming from my mic, it's because the other half is watching the football game. So just wanted to provide that caveat. I'll do my best in editing. For the remainder of New York Comic Con, again, not to belabor the foot issues, but it was abbreviated because I just physically couldn't do it as much as I wanted to. I went to one of the panels that our friend Thomas Crowell, ESQ, provides, not the CLE, but he ran an interesting panel about pitfalls that creators might fall into in protecting their intellectual property rights. I went on Sunday morning. I saw the screening of Batman vs. Two-Face, which is the last project of Adam West prior to his death, and Two-Face in the film is played by William Shatner, who is ideal in that part for a Batman 66 version of Two-Face. And then at the end of the panel, both Shatner and Burt Ward were in-house. A lot of ham going on there, as you can imagine.
That must have been glorious.
It was great, and it was a very nice memorial to Adam West. There's some really, really cool Easter eggs in the movie. I thought the first Batman animated, the Batman 66 animated, the Cape Crusaders, it was okay. This one is much better in execution. Much better. And there's one little bit, like I'm dying to tell you guys, but I cannot spoil the surprise. And it's like 3 seconds, but oh god, it's brilliant. These people who make these movies are so smart.
I have one more thing I forgot to mention, and I don't know, did you ever go talk to Ryan Hack?
Robert Hack, yes, I did.
Robert Hack. No,
yeah, while I was sweating,
What did you think?
Oh, well, I've met him before.
I didn't know that. Or if you told me, I didn't realize it. But oh my god, the sweetest little ginger cub you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And like so nice and modest. And like, do you know his story, how he got into comics? Like, dude just tweeted at Archie editor and said, "Hey, I'd really like to be a part of this. Here's some of my stuff that he had done."
Yeah.
And like totally got the gig. And the gig was Sabrina, and now they're making a Sabrina show.
Yeah.
That maybe inspired somewhat. But I mean, I had never met him. I didn't know anything about him, or at least I didn't retain anything. And seriously, one of the nicest, cutest little bears in the show floor.
Yeah. Speaking of other cute bears, unfortunately, when I stopped by Rafer's booth, he wasn't there.
Oh.
So, Robert Hack and I also have a love of lobby cards from old film.
Oh.
And
nice.
He has an amazing collection. Mine is basically centered around Cary Grant. I don't have too much that's outside of that. He has some old cereal ones from Republic and Universal cereals, and he has an amazing collection. And he told me
Wow.
he bought a bunch at the con. And Brian, actually, when I ran into you, we ran into Ed Cato of Captain
Yes, it
Action
was so good to
Enterprises.
see
It was
him.
good to see
Yeah.
him. But also, if you're intending to find somebody, you'll never find them at that con.
Well, I went by to see Dan Parent like 3 times, and every time, I mean, admittedly all Thursday afternoon, but like I was so sad because I always see Dan and I always love talking to him, and he was super sweet after the show. He messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I'm so sorry I missed you." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. It was such a sad." But I mean, yeah, no, this is why I love the shows, is just seeing my friends and seeing people who I've become friends with, creators I respect, and that's the joy. So I every year I can go back for those reasons, at least I want to.
Right.
And New York's definitely one you're gonna constantly get a lot of. Oh, Ramon Perez. I forgot. How can I forget to talk about Ramon Perez?
Ow! How did that happen?
It's the cold. I blame the concrete.
What do you call him? Poppy? Is it Poppy? No.
I mean, he's totally a Poppy, but although he is younger than me, I talked to him a little bit.
That doesn't matter sometimes.
Nope, not at all.
Nope. It does not matter now.
Nope.
He is wrapping up his Marvel work after he just did the Marvel Legacy book with Bendis, the Spider-Man book, and which is great, some great art. And I think he said he has like 1 or 2 more like little things, nothing ongoing, and he's stepping away. He's like, I really want to get back to telling my own stories and working with his Raid company out of Toronto, the studio he has. I guess they're trying to make Raid Raid is going to become its own publisher, and do their own stuff. And they had an anthology there at the show that I bought that has his stuff and some other of his artists. I can't remember off the top of my head any of the other ones, but some other well-known artists that are out of Toronto are part of that studio. And he, unfortunately, is still not parted with his Farscape original pages. And I asked him again every time I see him, because I want it to be in his head that if he ever decides to part with them, he knows who will buy them, and it is me. No, I love seeing him. And, come to think of it, I think he was under the weather. I think I got my con cred from Ramon. I really think I remember him saying something about, he's just getting over something. Okay.
Oh my God.
So
Brian, I have this vision of you with your fingers under your chin, with your eyelashes batting. I got sick from Ramon.
Oh, seriously, right? If only I really had earned that. You know what I mean? But no, I love Ramon. Every time I see him, it's great.
Okay, so I just want to also talk about one other event I was part of. So if you have something else, Brian, why don't we get to it, and then I'll get to mine.
I mean, the only other thing I want to mention is the fact that I dragged Pat to a Mr. Robot party, he's never seen the show. He really just knew I loved it and was excited. And oh my God, not only was it the coolest, like, fictional corporate party I've ever been to, but they had a little kind of quest thing in the party that you got to do. And they totally like disrupted it, as you'd expect, with this whole, bank fictional thing. And then in the show, there's the F Society group. It's like anonymous. They come over to take over, and that all happened as you'd expect. And everybody got to put masks on and be the F Society guys. And they showed the first episode of season 3, which didn't air until last night for everybody else. And it was an amazing time. And I want to thank Pat, because he, again, had no idea any of this. He hadn't seen any of the show before. He's had to jump right in the middle of, like, the beginning of season 3, which is, by the way, not a good jumping on point. I will just point that out. Spoils a lot. But we really had a great time. I really had a great time, and he was very happy that I had a good time. So that was the last thing of the New York Comic Con experience.
Okay, was the Mr. Robot event seated?
No. Well, they had seats down front.
Okay.
And we talked about the venue.
This took place at a venue called Terminal 5 in New York City, which is one of the most frustrating, annoying concert venues, probably the most annoying concert venue in the city. It's clearly designed by somebody who's used to being on the guest list. Oh my God, when it's a crowded concert there, it's unbearable.
It was not bad because they may have limited, I don't know how the numbers thing worked, but it was not packed.
That's good.
There were seats down front, so you could, if you had planned it, gone down and sat. We didn't. We just kind of hung out because we didn't know what was going to happen. And I got some good shots from higher up in, like, the second floor or whatever. But The one story I will tell about the seating, we were able to get seats eventually, bar seats kind of along the U, if you will, along the balcony kind of area. And we sat down watching, and this drunk woman comes up after some other couple had been in there in front of us and had left. This drunk bitch sits down, takes a drink, there's free alcohol, free food, and it's like pours it into her own and chugs the whole thing. And we're just sitting there like aghast that this chick is so, it was a good moment. And then, we watched the show. But anyway, so yeah, it was great. It was great. If you ever have a chance, if you like Mr. Robot, if they ever have a eCoin and Mr. Robot event in one of your cities for whatever reason, just do it and go. They're always amazing.
Okay, the event that I also wanted to talk about was the event that I was part of on Friday night, also at Rock Bar, which was the music video book club that my good friend Chris Cummins was the, I want to say moderator for. I'm not exactly sure. It was myself and another gentleman, a comedian, Alex Webb. And I initially thought that we were going to be doing like an MST3K treatment of some rock videos, mostly from the 80s, where we would be talking over them. It actually was a little different. We actually had the audience watch the videos and then we commented. And that was a format that it worked. I was a little bit confused about how that worked. I was a teenager who grew up in the 80s. I know some of these videos inside out. And it was a lot of fun. I really hope we do it again. Unfortunately, the event wasn't recorded, but at the very least, I'll be doing it again with Chris at some point in the upcoming months, probably in Philadelphia next. He'd like to do this at different cities around different cons. Not exactly comic-oriented, but certainly geek-oriented, given some of the videos that you saw. And Jason from Rock Bar said it was the perfect Friday night event because it kept a lot of people at the bar after the drag event that preceded it. And it's always good when people are drinking at a bar, so I had a great time at that and really look forward to doing it again. Okay, gentlemen, I have a question for you. Since we went off on that tangent, we're currently an hour and 16 minutes into our recording. And initially we were going to talk about television because we had a lot of premieres over the last, I'd say like 2 weeks at this point. Do you want to table that for another time, or you want to talk a little bit about it, or what do you want to do there?
I think we can table it. I think we can have probably maybe a dedicated episode just to that, because there's plenty to talk about alone on the TV, and if we want to get to comics today.
Yeah.
I feel like tabling it's good, and for this reason alone, I need to be drunk, and I need to talk about Flash.
Okay.
For that reason alone, even though I'm 2 beers in and haven't had a lot of food today, I feel like we could do it another day.
Okay.
I hope it's not a drunken rant about Flash.
So I think we should plan on drunken TV catch up.
Yeah.
I think
Ron will love
we're gonna
that.
have fun with that one.
I think we would benefit from that because there's a lot of interpretations about some of these shows I think would benefit from brain cells dying concurrently. So.
Yes.
But just to give you people a taste, I mean, we've had the returns of Supergirl and Lucifer and The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow. Arrow just aired. I don't think any of us watched it because we were all talking. Gotham. What else? Riverdale. And we had the premieres of The Gifted and Marvel's Inhumans. And, oh man, okay, I can't wait for that. So we'll do a dedicated episode of that.
I definitely want to be drunk for that. Yeah.
As I said a couple weeks ago, I thought this season of Gotham jumped a school of sharks. It's going to be fun. So
yes.
We'll plan that really soon. So let's go to comics. And Steve, you had to take a little bit of a backseat early on with the two of us yapping about what we were doing. So why don't you go to the spinner rack first and you tell us about something you're reading?
Yeah, I mean, geez, it's like you did some kind of like amazing stuff at Comic-Con, whatever. Well, I sat at home and unpacked boxes. So the past couple of weeks, it's been some really great stuff, especially coming out of DC, and I'm talking about the whole Dark Knight's metal contained. I don't want to say it's a self-contained event because there are some tie-ins with some of the regular series, but what they're doing is they're very focused, I think, at least at this stage. Who knows what's going to happen, in a couple months, but at this stage, they're pretty focused on introducing not just these legacy characters, from the very long history of DC, but also some of these new characters, these new villains. And of course, it started off as just the big bad sort of in the shadows in this other dark universe, Barbatos or Barbados, however we want to pronounce it. But over the past month or so, past couple of months, they've been slowly introducing the dark universe Batman, for lack of a better word. And the latest one of these, before Metal number 3 came out, was Batman the Dawnbreaker, who's the Green Lantern corollary, the evil Batman Green Lantern. And totally in line with the other ones that we've seen, the Red Death and what was the other one? Murder Machine. Dawnbreaker is bleak and violent and horrifying and just the darkest possible version of Bruce Wayne that you can get, but this time with a Green Lantern ring thrown in. And it comes with it's got the variant covers, but I actually have been really loving these sort of metallic covers that they've had, and this one for the Dawnbreaker is pretty spectacular. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, and that's again by Justin Fabok, I believe, did that one. But in this one, of course, it introduces the alternate version, the Dark Universe version of Bruce Wayne, who, after witnessing the death of his parents, was chosen by a Green Lantern ring because he had no fear. Of course, unfortunate for the Green Lantern ring and for the rest of that universe, not only did he have no fear, he really didn't have any remorse either. And through his sheer own personal willpower and need for vengeance, he basically took over the Green Lantern ring and took the light of will and made it a light of, or actually I guess the darkness of will. It's very, it's almost like the negative aspects of will, and just made it horribly evil. So of course follows him throughout his apparently very short career, completely eviscerating all of the enemies or all the villains in Gotham, and then unfortunately encountering the rest of the Green Lantern Corps, who've rightly seen him as a threat. But as with the other ones, it ends sort of in the present time, where they're attacking, the home cities of whatever, member of the Justice League that they represent. So of course it ends with them attacking Coast City, and sets it up obviously for Metal number 3. So I'm actually just loving these tie-ins. I think they're great. Wonderful way to introduce these villainous characters. Hopefully they can keep up the momentum, because it is wild and crazy. I feel like I should be listening to some, Mortiz or something while I'm reading these.
Well, it sounds like you will be able to do that with an upcoming soundtrack.
Good.
That they announced at New York Comic Con. I also think it's worth mentioning that the other two specials that have come out regarding these Dark Universe Batman versions, the Red Death, which provided the
Flash version,
Flash mashup,
Bat Flash,
right, and the Murder Machine, which was the Cyborg Batman mashup. I have to say, the thing that surprised me the most about Metal is how much fun it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say it's like dumb fun. It's almost as if these are like early Image books, but with really skillful writers.
Mm-hmm.
There is that vibe to it of, anything can go, and it's so over the top. But there's some moments that are so, I mean, like that moment in Metal 2 where Superman and Wonder Woman having a conversation through a hole in Clayface's chest. I mean, it's like there's so much crazy shit going on. There's, Plastic Man is encased as a bomb because he has a virus, and so, I mean, there's just so much crazy shit, and it's bringing in everything from the DC universe.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's a huge Hawkman influence in there, principally because of the Nth Metal. which is one of the metals. And it's one of those things, like, if you try to describe the plot of this to somebody else, you'd fail miserably because you'd forget about 30,000 things.
Well, they've thrown in Sandman now. I mean, Sandman's now part of this officially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sandman is now a character now. I don't know how much he's going to pop up, but obviously he's got to have some kind of important influence on this.
Yeah. But that's the thing that surprised me the most, because as much as I enjoyed Snyder and Capullo's run on Batman, there weren't a lot of, hey, hooray, I'm having fun moments, And this is just jam-packed with them. And again, as you said, Steve, it's dark. I mean, there's some really dark areas. The laughing Batman, holy shit, that's some creepy shit, which is running through the Gotham Resistance tie-ins, which were okay, which was Suicide Squad, Nightwing, Teen Titans, and Green Arrow, who are all in Gotham to deal with something. Brian, I believe you agree with us about how fun it is.
I did not know that I would like it, and then I read the Red Death issue, and I got it and loved it. And I'm actually sort of surprised that this pitch hasn't been done before, because it's so obvious. Like, what if Batman conquered in different universes or all Elseworlds each of the Justice League and took their powers? Like, this has to have happened in other forms and other things and smaller scale, but like that conceit, and even though obviously it's done in a way that makes it's not our Batman, it's these dark universe Batmans, and even the idea of the dark universe, or the dark multiverse rather, like it's so obvious as an outgrowth of what Grant Morrison did in Final Crisis and in Multiversity, that this series is so much a love letter to DC. And kind of the ultimate fan fiction wankery, like in a good way, because it does tie together so many things in various, like, we got the Rock of Ages playing a part, Plastic Man's in there, like it's borderline ridiculous, and I think that's what makes it fun. But I just read issue 3 today, and it's dark. I mean, things go very badly. And you see the waste that is the DC multiverse, not even just universe. Like, the whole damn place is really getting bad because of what the actions of I can't even say it, Barbatos. Even though anyway. But no, I'm really thrilled. And the art's fantastic. I mean, it's this team that has been doing Batman forever, and I think as a love letter to Batman, this is going to stand up to so many other things as just the most, like, Batman's going to play a major role in the sort of, in issues of this series. He's going to come back. He's going to do this, and maybe in some slightly unexpected ways, but like, they've found a way to really wind everybody down into the pits of hell, and to then come back from that is going to be really rewarding. So.
Well, and what's really interesting about this, and you guys both said it, Final Crisis and Multiversity are a huge influence on what's happening here. It really does grow out of that kind of those kinds of ideas that Morrison came up with, but it also takes a previous, I guess it was kind of a crisis, it wasn't really a crisis, but previous big event that DC had that was absolutely, for the most part, shitty, and that was Forever Evil, which had a very similar, I would say, very basic concept of evil versions of all the Justice League, basically, not just Batman as all the evil versions of Justice League, but coming in and taking over and turning everything into just an absolute disaster zone. That was done horribly. Coming from the evil Earth 3, everybody was just a horrible person, and everything terrible that could happen happened, and all the major players were removed somehow. That was a terrible, terrible story. Wasn't well done, wasn't well written, wasn't consistent.
Not one ounce of fun in that series.
Oh, not at all.
Not ounce of fun.
It didn't really, like, some of it was just confusing, some of it was, just a series of Deus Ex Machinas that, good or bad, were just terrible. Like, nothing really made sense. Here, it takes that, evil versions, evil villains taking over who have equivalent powers to the Justice League, and picking them off one by one by attacking their home cities. it should, if this were Forever Evil 2, I would be tossing it in the bin. I wouldn't even bother reading it. But because this is done in such a great way that it really shows that not only do the writers love what they're writing, they enjoy what they're writing. They've got 75 plus years worth of DC Universe history that they're throwing into this thing. From the Challengers of the Unknown to, all the different versions of Hawkman that you mentioned. I mean, this could be one of the big, memorable, events that DC has had over the past 20, 30 years. And not in a bad way. Not like Convergence is remembered as how bad it was. But this could be remembered as how exciting it was and how much fun it was to read.
Especially because it's so chaotic.
Oh, yeah.
It's
and hopefully
so chaotic. It's literally like heavy metal.
Yeah.
It literally is. Like
the only
good,
thing that
fun, heavy metal.
Oh, exactly. The only thing I'm worried about right now is whether they can keep up the momentum while there's another big event going on, and that's Doomsday, which starts, I think, next month or the month after. We're going to have to they'll have competing event titles.
Oh, after New York, that date, November 22nd. At the panels for DC, they stress that Doomsday Clock is self-contained.
Oh, that's good.
There are no tie-ins. If you look for a tie-in, you go to Watchmen. And another big DC story, which should be pretty obvious if you understand the importance of the date of November 1992. So, and the first word in Doomsday Clock. So,
what could it be?
Yeah, Brian, let's go over to you. Anything you want to talk about from the spinner rack there?
Well, I feel like we should give Marvel a little bit of love, but I do want to come back to DC before we finish. Marvel, Generations? Marvel Legacy. Marvel Legacy number 1 came out, and I guess to represent what's going on in Marvel, this book was not what I thought it would be, and I think that's why I didn't love it. But it was basically a 0.1 or a 0 issue. They've kind of been both ways over the time. But really more of the sort of 0.1 that Marvel's been doing, which is sort of a universe anthology. Here's the state of the universe as it is right now, and springboard off all the different stories that are coming. And when I had been reading about the issue, all I could hear about was Jason Aaron and Esad Ribic, who I love, and everything they've been doing is amazing. And their parts of the issue were fantastic. You got a little kind of a story from the distant past of the Avengers of 1 million BC, which, of course, they don't call themselves Avengers. They're not. But the fact that the Marvel Universe has a dark secret that happened, in prehistoric times isn't, like, unheard of in comics to have that kind of story. So that was cool. And the ideas of what that's going to play out in the future, probably in Jason Aaron's book, if not others, is going to be kind of cool. But the other stuff that kind of was interwoven, it just like kind of all fell flat to me. Even if some of it was written by the new creative teams like Mark Waid and Chris Samnee did a page of their new Captain America series. Gosh, honestly, that's the only one I really remember very well. Because the rest I just don't care as much. I mean, I probably am forgetting one or two that were good, but like it was just, I wish they had called it a 0.1, or I wish they had made it clear that this was just what it was, and didn't get me all bonerized about, Ribic and Jason Aaron, who I got to talk to Jason Aaron about this at the release party here in Orlando. And I said, I'm like, hey, how did this all come to pass? Did you get like a paragraph from these other creative teams, or did you, how did that all work? And he's like, most of them would just send them their page. Only a few of them did he have to sort of flesh out a little bit. So it really was sort of an editorial construct that became that issue. So I wasn't thrilled with the cover. I thought it looked kind of not great. And I thought the whole wraparound lenticular thing, or not lenticular, was it foil? It's just like, why are we doing this again? I mean, metal, I'll give a pass because it's metal. That kind of makes sense. And the lenticular covers that Marvel's doing now with the new numberings, that's pretty cool. When you see those, it's pretty special what they've done. But the whole Legacy #1 thing, I was a little disappointed with, to say the least.
I gotta say, those lenticulars where the cover distortions, some of those are great.
Oh yeah.
They were all over the place at New York Comic Con. Steve, anything you want to add about Legacy there? Guess not.
Absolutely not. No, because I haven't read any of it. I just wasn't interested. I don't know what it is. I didn't read any of Secret Empire, and Legacy to me, I'm not attached to a lot of these old characters. I actually like sort of growth and natural development of the storylines. I know that some of it is great, but I just not.
Out of the titles that have been announced, I will be giving Captain America a try, and Marvel 2-in-1.
Okay, that was one of the ones that I think dovetailed in, and that was pretty cool.
Cool. I'm going over the spinner rack. I'm going to grab 4 DC Comics really quick to talk about them. One is Wonder Woman #31. It's the first issue written by James Robinson. People know I'm a huge James Robinson fan. This storyline is called Children of the Gods. It involves Wonder Woman's technical half-brother, Hercules. And this is the Hercules Unbound sort of version of Hercules, who is taken out of this mortal coil for one reason or another, and through a probate lawyer, Wonder Woman discovers she inherits his estate. It moves into some other information regarding Wonder Woman's new status as, which has carried over from the New 52 as a daughter of Zeus. And the artist in this is, oh God, the last name is Pagulian, I believe. And there's some beautiful pages. And I mean, bearded Hercules. You know, what else do you have to say? Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye. Hits its last issue for a little while, and it wraps up the main storyline. I will just read you the last line of the book, where Cave Carson, at the end of the adventure, says, I don't know, infinite worlds, infinite possibilities. Maybe I'll start a podcast. Moving on to Scooby-Doo Team Up #30, featuring a group that was just mentioned by Brian, Challengers of the Unknown. If you love the Silver Age era of DC Comics, this throws in Cave Carson, this throws in the Sea Devils, this throws in Rip Hunter and his group. It's a really fun journey throughout the Silver Age concepts. And then the last book I want to mention is Red Hood and the Outlaws, which is a lot of fun as well. This version of Red Hood and the Outlaws is sort of a twisted trinity, with Red Hood being complemented by Artemis and Bizarro. Bizarro nearly died. He has been saved by his creator Lex Luthor, but this version of Bizarro is Brain Zorro. Instead of being a bumbling idiot, he turns out to be super intelligent. And while Red Hood and Artemis are out on a mission and take a quick nap, Brain Zorro builds a headquarters for them that defies the laws of physics. It's so much fun, and Smart Bizarro is amazing to read. It's one of the hidden gems right now of Rebirth. Okay, Steve, let's send you over to the spinner rack. What are you reading that you're enjoying?
Well, you know how I just got done telling everybody that I'm not reading anything Marvel Legacy because I'm not interested. So I'm going to talk about Iceman #6, which has the Marvel Legacy branding right up in the top left.
You're a liar.
Yeah, I know. And of course, this spins directly out of, some of the storylines from Secret Empire, and of course, spoilers for anybody who hasn't been listening for the past couple of months. Black Widow was killed, and so Iceman and several of her former teammates from the Champions get together to mourn their lost friend. And so they're off in LA. One of the things that I really love about Stina Grace's writing is that the characters have such a familiarity. Like, you could read the dialogue between Iceman and Hercules and Angel and just kind of, put them in your head as, hey, these are kind of my buddies too. Like, this is how we talk. This is how we converse. It just seems so natural and fluid, and I really appreciate that. And this is definitely, it's a very dialogue-heavy book. Not a ton of action until the very end. But you really get to feel for these characters who obviously have lost somebody very important to them, but are getting together as friends to celebrate, the friendship that they had and the team that they used to have. Now, I can't really recall when this version of the Champions was around. Was that the early 80s, late 70s?
No, 75 to about 77.
75 to 77. Yeah, and that kind of makes sense with the the costumes that they have in the flashbacks.
I loved that book.
Well, and it's actually a pretty interesting team. I mean, you got good old Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider. You've got Angel. You've got Hercules, Iceman. Black Widow was part of it, but also Darkstar, who I really don't have a lot of knowledge about.
She hasn't made too many appearances outside of the Champions.
It didn't seem so. I think she's, she comes in, she kind of breezes in and says, "Hey, I've been off world and I just came in. I'm wearing this, I have to wear civvies, that kind of thing." Yeah. But just the dialogue is what really shines here, and I like that it's continuing Iceman's journey, exploring sort of his, the fact that he's gay, but also exploring having a first real date, which he gets to go on in this. And of course, like all dates in any superhero comic book, they always end with an attack by some outside force. In this case, reconstituted Sentinels, rebuilt, I guess, to promote a special effects studio. Of course, why not? But it's tons of fun. It's actually part one, of a couple part series. So I'm actually looking forward to the next couple issues with this. And again, I love Sina Grace's stuff, and Iceman is just more icing on that giant icing cake.
Now, I do have a caveat. I love that book. That doesn't mean it's held up well.
The Champions?
Yeah. So if you read some of these issues, the books really didn't hold up well. There's a charm to them, but it's some of the dialogue and it was like those things where a creature arises from the earth and a passerby is like, "It's the hordes of hell," or something. Sample them. Don't spend too much, but sample them. Okay, let's go over to Bryan. I held off on a book because I believed he was going to talk about it. Bryan, what are you going to go to the spinner rack for?
Okay, so Mr. Miracle, one of my favorite characters, and I think we talked a little bit about the earlier issue, maybe. Tom King and Mitch Gerrits, both creators who have done some cool stuff, but together they have done some amazing work, including Sheriff of Babylon. So this is about Mr. Miracle, but it's also about the New Gods. And what I love is this third issue. It's very minimalist. You have a lot of 9-panel setups where it's the same basic composition, just slight variations to show the passage of something. And they do this several times, and it's beautiful. Like, it looks great. It's stylized to be sure, but like, the last page? Yeah, the very last page, actually the last 3 pages, but culminating last page, you get a beat, pun almost intended, with Orion and Scott Free, Mr. Miracle, that is a transformative moment in their relationship and in the story of the New Gods, all in one section. And I don't know where the hell it's going. Like, this book continues to baffle me into what it's doing, where it's going, but it's so amazing, and it's so there were a few beats that actually made me think of contemporary politics, not in anything like overt, just in sort of subtle ways. And I listened to Word Balloon, Tom King's interview with Suntress, and it's clear that there are elements of the political climate that have affected him, Tom, in his writing of this book. So I need to see how this goes, and it's only issue 3 out of a 12-issue series, and what it's going to do. But so far, it is like the thing I look forward to the most. In it only comes out once a month. In my pull, it is the book that I will read immediately upon leaving the store because it's so cool and impressive and important to me. But yeah, definitely if you are a fan of Mr. Miracle, the New Gods, this is the best stuff we've had for New Gods. And again, it's a whole, all the New Gods are represented. We had Forager show up in this issue, who I know has his own thing going over in Bug, but very, yeah, it's crazy. You got to read it if you're a fan.
I only have gone through issue 2. I don't have number 3 yet because of the DCBS shipping schedule. What an interesting take on Granny Goodness.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Did you have her? What did she sound like in your head when she was talking? Did she sound like Ed Asner? Because it totally sounded like Ed Asner.
It is, but like in my head, her voice is almost like a lunch lady version of Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
I don't know where, which I guess isn't too far from Ed Asner.
No,
but
yeah.
Tom King provides one of the best lines in a comic book I've seen in a long time, where Barter says, "I'm too tall," and Granny Goodness says, "Oh, darling, don't you know by now everybody's too something." Really despicable character, but just those moments like this. I mean, I think that's what gets to the heart of why there has been something enduring about New Gods, where there hasn't been the same interest in other later Kirby creations like OMAC or the Eternals. Is there's so much complexity in what you can do with these characters. I'm really loving this book. It's at the top of the stack every month. So
absolutely.
Okay, I overloaded you guys with some quick takes, so I'm not going back to the spinner rack. And we've been at this for a bit of time, so we're going to wrap up and go to our last segment of the show, which, as people who are regular listeners know, is the Woofs of the Week segment, where we signify something, be it a comic book or a TV show, a movie, a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, may be interested in sampling. So I'm going to go over to eeny, meeny, miny, moe, Bryan first. Bryan, what is your woof of the week?
I really want everyone listening to the show. We don't do a politics show, although we did that one time. It was great.
Oh, that was so much fun. I want to do that again.
Anytime you want.
Oh, anytime
I really want everyone to just open their ears. I heard this the other day. Someone was saying, I just don't follow politics. I don't care. And, this is probably true no matter what era you're in, but you always should follow what's going on and have a critical eye, and not just if your candidate's not in the White House and the other side, quote unquote, is, but especially when daily revelations and daily decisions are going to have an impact on your life. And specifically right now, those of you who are on the exchange for insurance, you need to be aware that open enrollment starts November 1st, because the government will not really help you there. And decisions being made as we basically record this are actively torpedoing your chances of getting a good deal. And you just need to know that this is happening, and you need to be mindful of it when you make your decisions, and when you know that this is happening, and you need to become better informed. And some of you, I'm sure, are very informed. I mean, present company obviously excluded here, but I hear people more and more I just don't want to get involved, or I don't have the energy to keep up, or it's not my problem, it doesn't affect me. And it's no, it does, it really will, and you just may not realize it yet. And wouldn't you rather make that informed decision next time you vote, because you've been paying attention? I'm not saying pick a side. I'm not saying go out and protest. I'm just saying pay attention and get your news from reliable sources. Don't read it on Facebook. Don't read your crazy grandmother's emails that are sent out with a million receipts. Go out and do your own fact checking and your own investigating from reliable sources that have been time honored and trusted, and just know what's happening, because it's without precedent in many ways day to day that we're in a strange world. And This is a terrible wolf of the week, right? This is like, I'm not promoting anything really amazing, but just begging, I think, our listeners.
You're promoting people to open their eyes, and that is important.
Yes, just open your eyes, and open your ears, and every orifice you can open, because you've got to be connected and not turn aside. I will say though, I haven't get all that passion. Go see Blade Runner 2049. It's amazing.
Let's go over to Steve. Steve, what is your wolf of the week?
Mine's definitely not as impassioned a plea as Brian's. In fact, like I usually do, I'm doing a TV show, but I'm doing a completely off the wall, unexpected TV show that's I would say totally gay, called Bromans or Bromans. That's currently airing in the UK on ITV2 and in the US, if you can pirate it or find some place to stream it. The show is ridiculous. It's a reality show where a bunch of dude bros from various parts of the UK, all of them perfectly waxed, most of them with lots of giant tattoos, and nearly all of them massively jacked in some way or another, get to compete in a set that looks like an ancient Roman Colosseum or town, and they bring their girlfriends with them. And the girlfriends basically also have little challenges on their own, like making wine and not getting too drunk, or doing each other's hair, while the men get to strip down to either leather jockstraps or nothing and wrestle each other or punch each other or lift heavy things. It is the most tongue-in-cheek, clearly aware of what it is kind of reality show, where it highlights the ridiculousness of these kinds of competitions. But it's also fun because you get to look at a lot of mostly naked, if not completely naked, because yes, there is lots of butt and wang, competition show. It's insane, but I recommend it. I think the ladies who listen, as well as some of the men who are listening, will enjoy it, just for the sheer ridiculousness of what it is. And yes, there is an unofficial podcast called Homo Empire that recaps every episode, and I also recommend you check that out because it is also as ridiculous as the show.
Okay, well, my wolf of the week, this has been the most chaotic schizophrenic episode, so why don't I keep delivering? My wolf of the week goes to Tony Romo, the former quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Who would have thought this guy turns out to be an amazing color commentator, possibly the best new color commentator since Dan Fouts, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of people who won't care, but my wolf goes to Tony Romo. And the sub-wolf goes to Steve. Steve recommends a lot of podcasts to me. I finally got my teeth into one, and I am so hooked, and that is My Favorite Murder. Oh, my God, what a great show. Steve, next time, just push me even harder toward a podcast like that. I am loving that show.
Well, there's so much fun to listen to. And of course, true crime. Who doesn't like to hear, somebody telling a story about horrific murders?
So I just love when they go through the listener submissions. Oh my God, those are the best episodes. In honor of the ladies of My Favorite Murder, we were as schizophrenic and as tangenty as they were on this episode. So we're going to wrap this up again. We are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears podcast. You can subscribe to us through iTunes. You can listen to us through Stitcher Radio. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a wolf and an explosion, and we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Wolf!
If I had another life, another one I'm in, I'd reach down into my soul and find a little love within. I'd emerge as someone new, dressed in another skin. Be someone who wants something more, and not the fool I've been. I look into your eyes to see what I can see, but I